For my 33rd birthday, I decided to take a trip from Birmingham to Oxford, feeling a pull to go back to Oxford University since I last visited it when I was in my teens. The video will be an exploration of Oxford's National History Museum and Oxford Universities and other things I saw along the way. Oxford always sticking out to me as the Ox equals 66 or highlighting a bull, and Ford can highlight a fort. Oxford always reminding me of Hogwarts and magic. I feel what I'm about to speak about touches on two subjects. One, energy harvesting, and the second, programming. I spoke about before in other videos such as Circuit Board Earth, Sports Circuits Part 1 and 2, the energy harvesting which is going on in sports stadiums, theatres and other like venues. But not just energy harvesting, also energy transmutation, changing one energy into a different form. Whilst visiting Oxford and inside the museum, I realised that I was standing inside an energy harvesting machine, just like the cinemas, theatres and sports stadiums spoke about previously. Another point I'll briefly speak about is the spires spread all across the university associated with energy harvesting. And Oxford is twinned with 7 cities. Adam will touch upon this later when speaking about ley lines in the Earth's grid, and how that relates to other giant organisms which are found in videos such as Mother Earth. So my route, my journey, I started off inside Oxford University Museum of National History. The journey then took me to various Oxford University buildings. And take note of the yellow masonry stones used, as the stone is key and important in all these type of energy harvesting places. Stone known to store energy, direct it, channel it.
What do you think, Nam?
Well, it's how it was.
Look at the architecture in it.
So we begin in this fake history museum. False programming. I find the amount of drains odd. There's absolutely loads following channels hinting at an underground system, and the pattern that's presented on the drains too I find interesting. You'll find all types of shapes in it: Freemasonry, occult, also my logo, which essentially is an energy reactor acting on the micro and macro scale. The columns and arches stuck out to me. Serpentine, lizard, 18666. And the material these columns are made of said to be stone and rock quarried, again a result of mining. Organic matter, I suppose this to be. The museum's full of all these types of columns. This one to me looks like blood. This is the centre of the museum, and notice the children. Later on I'll show you a diagram of the museum, and the children are directly in the centre of the museum. All you need to do is imagine an energy reactor of some sort of energy generator and what the children are being used for, their innocence and pureness.
That's really nice, eh?
You like that finish now?
Yeah.
Well, apparently it took 2.7 billion years to get there. You could do that with a few sponges, couldn't you?
Standing in the middle at the rear of the building, the entrance there, directly in front of me. This is how it looks above. And what I imagine it to be is a cross, as you can see from what I've drew, and then it would create a box or a circuit. The outline of that being the red, us being the green that walk through that circuit. In some cases walk circly around it, the blue line, and the yellow marks highlight the middle where the children are located, where that energy innocent hotspot is of pure energy. Now, as I've already stated, I believe this to be energy harvesting. The shape and the type of materials used in the building, the amount of arches, columns, and how things are placed, create, generate and harvest energy. Children being a key part to that energy harvesting system. If we were to look at the museum's map of the 2 floors and draw the line again, imagining it going from the bottom directly up and the path which we take to enter and exit, again creating the cross. And if we were to match the columns, it creates a grid, a cage, an 8x8 grid, and you can almost see the pyramid within it and where the energy would be generated in the centre.
Let's get you your all the crayons are down on the blue tables. There are scissors.
Speaking to an American friend about this idea, this concept, she checked out the National History Museum in Washington DC, and she sent me photos of an elephant which is placed central to the building, and she told me that this elephant is a central attraction for children to walk around. Again, I feel the same thing is highlighted not only in the National History Museum in the UK, but the one in the US also. This central point where children are attracted to, where pure innocent energy is harvested, again in the centre of the building. Another thing that I thought was interesting before I continue was how almost all of these buildings have the same entrance and exit. So essentially, what you're doing, you're entering, walking around, having your energy harvested or transmuted inside the building, and then exiting from the same place in which you entered. Now this creates an electrical symbol all on its own, the shape, or it could be seen as an omega symbol. The other shapes that I've shown on the building of the cross is a well-known symbol. And also, if we imagine the line and the circle that we make around this central part of the building, it gives us another shape, which is key to electrical circuits. Again, hinting to energy harvesting and a grid which we sit upon. Us being that energy which is harvested. The way energy usually flows is through an entrance to its central point through a different exit. Just like when we eat food, it goes down into our stomach through another hole. If it was to come up through the same place which it entered, we would be sick. It is unnatural. It's not the way it's meant to come out. It's meant to exit through another hole. So this all alone, I believe, is creating something. We enter these buildings, whether that be a cinema, sports ground, museum, etc., have our energy harvested, and we leave exhausted, ready to do it all again on another occasion. Before we continue to make this more visual and easy to imagine, I'll draw it. So this is how I see it. If we imagine this is the building, and then most of them have got domes. In my case, it's more of a tower like that. Yeah, so it's either that or a dome. And the entrance and the exit is generally the same door, isn't it, at the front. So the way I see it, you've got the energy at the top. You've got the energy at the bottom. And then crossing through that, you can either picture us crossing through it or potentially going around in a circle and coming back. So what shape that presents is the energy going through the dome down below, and then us walking through it as a cross. If you look at it the other way, you've got the energy coming up. And this would be almost like that. That's how it would be represented. So you got the energy coming straight through, and then we come in, go around and out. So this is the shape it creates. And you saw that many times before. And even more than that, if you imagine this is just an energy reactor, energy of any type, what the energy does, it spins round, doesn't it? So it's creating, the energy shooting in and out, like in mad directions in it. You know the route it follows. I'm holding it with one hand, so I can't do it. So it's following all these routes, but it's always coming back through the centre. If you put David the Points model on and create the hourglass shape, it's always coming back through. And that in my museum is where the kids are. So the kids area is there. Is the area that's being harvested. The spirals at the top. Further energy. They look like diode batteries with the knocks on them. Creating that spider-like shape. My logo, they're all the same. And that is working within there. So the people will not only just be walking straight or across, they're going to be going all in different directions. Coming in and out the same hole. But all transverse into that centre point there. Carrying on around the museum, it's just full of bones, death. One interesting thing I did find was the majority of the fossils, they're calling fossils, were found in Dudley. Potentially signifying that again, the place where I'm located and I've highlighted on other videos is a significant place. The mask caught my attention many times before. I spoke about the different masks that men wear, the altars that can be called upon, the different personalities, the masks that we can willingly choose to take on or take off, or the masks that we have no choice over, that we're programmed. The demons within. Upstairs gives you a perspective of the type of shape, all the arches, the columns, different perspective. Again, this is the centre angle, highlighted by the huge dinosaur and then the children. And we exit the museum and proceed up Parks Road towards Oxford University's campus, or some of the buildings and libraries. Looking at some of the architecture and noticing the dates.
1939.
Well,
Say to that.
well, that was just perfect in them days. They did everything perfect, not like today. So money cost saved to them today.
Even then could tell the architecture that was made was to a high degree. Seeing the spires, diode-like shapes on top of the university. Imagining the electricity coming down into it, generating energy from the ether. From the air we look and we can see how it covers the whole of the building. Again, this yellow stone is used, this golden stone. Again, this representing a battery, but also linking to the human spine, to the nervous system, working on all levels. But they state these aren't for harnessing energy of any type. I think different. We proceeded into a courtyard within the university with some beautiful architecture, beautiful design, great craftsmanship, something hardly recognised in today's world. And then I spotted a right-handed glove, left, ignored by everybody else, but it's something that I've seen associated with Freemasonry or other secret cults. We proceed past the observatory, and some of the other university buildings. A huge dome on top that is replicated all across the world, not just in the UK. Again, we see these spires, these diode-like batteries on top of all the buildings, essentially creating an energy grid, charging from the ether.
Reason, because it's absolutely
And I found this interesting, how they had all the small stone pebble all around the observatory, all around the electrical grid. It's horrible to walk on, why put it there? The lampposts have a ball, and above the ball is a compass, a triangle, a square. Again, for me, associating to masonry, Freemasons, cults. St Mary's Pass this is located on suggests the site of a holy well. And then the ox standing on top of the water.
Well, it's an ox, isn't it?
Potentially suggests again water of significance, holy. The market inside of Oxford. I noticed the stone around the pathway, and then leaving I noticed the map. An interactive map of a walkway around Oxford Market. And look at the circuit. Again, it looks just like an electrical grid circuit. This street I found interesting. Every shop up this street name began with a W or an M, which I associate again with masonry, the double V, the M or the W. All the decorative art around Oxford is beautiful, hidden occult. They hold many keys. I looked at some of the old maps, as I do, and the things that stuck out to me were at the side of Oxford looked like potential plots of old quarries or grassland, meaning Oxford was situated there on purpose due to its location, due to the trees potentially. This section I found interesting in Oxford as it looks like a circuit board or part of a circuit board. The old pool or reservoir or water that was there is now a park or a playing fields. The same story which I've shown in previous videos. As we proceed round, we see ferries and islands, suggesting that some of the farmland surrounding was water before, and Oxford was a fort surrounded by water, as we can see from this photo, hugely indicating and showing the walls of the fort.
Dominating the landscape is the Glastonbury Tor or Mount, rising to a height of about 500 feet and once a place of Druidic worship. Archaeological excavations have found the area around Glastonbury was once a marshy tract. This is a model of a lake village excavated near Glastonbury, a settlement built on pilings and fillings, surrounded by water with a causeway to the mainland.
There are many maps to look through on various different sites. Here's just a few examples. Here we see the Holy Well, which was found by now. Holy Well Park, again at the back of the museum, is a huge park, a huge playing fields, potentially suggesting a huge mining location which was covered by a park, ideal for the museum's location and again linking to the energy harvesting alongside ley lines and trees. Here's a location that looks like the circuit board again. And what I found interesting, you can see a workhouse. The workhouse has been replaced by mosques, an Asian cultural centre, places of worship, energy harvesting. Again, looking at the map, there's so much to see, so much to investigate. You could spend hours upon it. Just up from the workhouse we see an asylum which still stands, the exact same building as before. Checking it out on Google, it was revealed it's now a hospital. The same story again as we've seen in other videos that I've made regarding asylums, workhouses and hospitals. Onto ley lines, the Earth's grid and the connections to the 7 cities, the 7 gates. Over to Adam.
So, following on from Chad's video on Oxford, one of the things that stuck to me was when he mentioned the spikes and the towers, which are from the Oxford University building. And from this aerial footage of the university, it quite clearly shows the amount of these spikes that are present within the building. So why they stuck to my mind is they reminded me personally of an electronic circuit board using circuitry. Because looking at this image here, it shows to me that the city of Oxford and its university buildings resemble a grid within itself. And these particular spikes are like the energy centers of the motherboard. So they remind me of those memory chips, the central processing units that you have on a motherboard with the spikes that you put in order so they can actually fit into the circuit board. And in my opinion, these buildings serve a similar purpose on the worldwide grid. Because if we use the analogy that the Mother Earth is just like a giant circuit board, these are the equivalent of those components which fit into that circuit board, into Mother Earth, and have a significant part to play within the whole Earth grid to enable the Earth grid to be working and functioning properly. And with the way that Oxford, the architecture of Oxford, the geology and the precise architecture, the engineering that has been involved on it, it has a major part to play within this part of the particular circuit. So if we zoom in on the main building in the Oxford University, as you can see these spikes a lot closer, to me, they resemble the spikes as you would see on electronic circuits. And to me, they look virtually similar. So in that case, they would be performing a similar function. Because as you can see, you've got the memory chips on the electric board, and through these connectors, through these spikes, they're the ones that send the energy, whatever purpose that these particular chips have, into the circuit board to enable the purpose of the circuit board to be working properly and function as they should do.
To generate and to amplify radio waves with very high frequencies, so-called microwaves, special tubes are required. For example, the klystron. The cavity resonators have a potential which is positive with respect to the cathode. Thus, the electrons emitted by the cathode are accelerated towards the first resonator. The resonators have apertures in the form of grids. The electrons will continue until they reach the collector. With a very small signal applied to the first cavity, the bunches arriving at the second cavity are very weak. But they will set up a field there which is strong enough to produce more concentrated bunches at the third cavity, and so on, enabling very large amplification factors to be obtained.
And Oxford is connected to other major universities in the UK, the most historical universities, and it's located within something that's called the Golden Triangle. And the Golden Triangle is referred to the connection between the three major London universities in Oxford, Cambridge, and London. And these are the most oldest universities in the UK, and they are regarded as the world leaders of centres of biotechnology. So that's one connection that Oxford has. And then if we move on to the next connection, as Chad has identified, the city of Oxford is twinned with 7 cities. And once Chad sent me this image from Oxford, the first thing that came to my mind was the number 7 is significant to Oxford. And looking closely at this sign, I noticed that it's been deliberately put with 4 cities being at the top, then there was a gap, and then there was 3 cities at the bottom. So to me, that creates the 4 and the 3. And the 4 and 3 add to the number 7. So I knew then that was a significant connection to all these other cities. So the first, I decided to have a look at the first city, which was Leyden. And if you look at the name Leyden, it's got the word lay in. So that confirms a connection with the ley lines to Oxford. So I decided to check the distance between Oxford and Leyden. And to my surprise, the distance was 396 kilometres, 0.66. So the first thing I noticed was the 3, the 6, and the 9. And if you're familiar with Nikola Tesla's work, those are significant numbers and have got a significant meaning. And I've noticed that in this particular one, the first city I picked up on, it has the number 666, which is what Chad has mentioned relating to Oxford and the Ox. So I thought, is this just a one-off or all other cities similar? So I decided to check the distance relating to all the other cities. So I checked the distance, and by adding up all the digits, whether it's in kilometres or miles, to get the single formula. So for example, with Leyden, we add all the digits up together, which add to 30, and then we make it to a single digit, which is 30. Or if it's 2 digits, we just add the last 2 digits to make it a 3. And to my surprise, all the distances, whether it be in kilometres or miles, all add up to numbers of 3, 6, 9. So I thought, hang on a minute, this is done for a purpose. You know, this is not random why certain cities are chosen to be twinned with Oxford. But all these cities have got a number of things in common, such as they're all cities with the most oldest, ancient, well-known universities of each particular country that they're located in. They're all located alongside the riverbanks, and all those riverbanks close to the city have all got historical quarrying sites that you can actually see on a map, similar to what Michelle Gibson has said. There are so many similarities to it. And if you look at the global views, so the Google Earth views of those cities, they've all got similar geometric grid-like formations within the city. So that's definitely a connection there. And one of the main things which connects all the cities from Oxford to the rest of the grid is through ley lines. So here we've got a screen of where I've identified 2 previous ley lines running through the city of Oxford. There are many other ley lines, but these are 2 that I've already had before looking into any more ley lines on here. And the first ley line that we've got on the left-hand side, this has got a significant interest to Chad, and Chad, I'm sure, is working on a video in the future to work along this alignment. So this other ley line, I've got a personal connection to, so I run through one of the nodes which connect onto the city of Oxford with this one, because with this particular ley line, it does actually run through the alignment of the house I used to live in previously as a family for 10 years. So I've got a personal connection with this ley line. Okay, and what we're seeing here is exactly 43 miles north of Oxford in the town of Leamington. There's a node which is referred to as the Midland Oak Tree, and this was regarded as marking the centre point of England. The most central part of England was marked by this oak tree. And it also relates to Chad's videos regarding the giant trees, where they were used to mark certain points as a node to identify certain parts of the grid. So as you can see on here, this picture was taken from a 1909 postcard showing the original Midland oak tree, which stood at this particular location just outside Leamington Spa. And if we look to the left, we can see two gentlemen standing. They look like they're quite tall next to this enormous oak tree, which in my opinion, comparing the size of the two people with the size of the tree, would probably be at least sort of 100, 150 feet tall at the very most. Yeah, so nearby, there's a plaque onto the current tree that's situated on that location, which confirms that in 1988, this plaque was laid, which states that it replaces the old original oak tree, which you've seen on the previous slide. There is now an oak tree that is growing in its place, which has been replaced from an acorn from that old tree, which was saved in 1967 when a tree had to be cut down because it died. And the current tree that sits on that land now was actually survived some extensive work that they done in the year 2002, where they excavated an underground water stream running directly under where the tree was and put that into an open and made open to prevent from from the houses from being flooded due to heavy rainfalls and stuff. So as we can see, this is the tree that has been replaced, and it's nowhere near that size considering it was planted in 1988, so it's sort of near enough 40 years old. We know that this tree is not going to grow anywhere near that size. The other one was on there previously because the land has been disturbed through creating, that underground water stream. So that tree is not going to have all the nutrients it requires in order to make it a previous size that it's done, that it has achieved. And one of the other connections that Oxford has is through the ley lines, which we've just gone through. And on top of the ley lines, rivers, canals, and other water sources are another source of connecting the energies into other nodes and other parts of the countries. And one of the main rivers that runs through the city of Oxford is the River Thames. And most people know the River Thames as the main river that runs through the centre of London and then enters into the North Sea. So here we can see a rough diagram of the direction of the flow of the river running from the west of the country through to the east of the country, coming out from the estuary, the Thames estuary, from London going into the North Sea. And as you can see, the flow of the river, it pretty much connects the Bristol Channel estuary running through the whole centre of the country to the other estuary. So in my opinion, this has either been man-made, this river, or it was a natural river, but at some stage, man has manipulated the flow of the river to suit its own purposes. Considering that the river actually starts in the location here, we can see that the river actually seems to flow upstream, up towards Oxford. And for some reason, Oxford appears to be the most northern part on a flow of the River Thames. If we go to the source of the River Thames, because according to the Environment Agency, the source of the river starts in a field, which they call the Thames Head, which is in a field which is 3 miles northwest of the town of Cirencester in Gloucestershire. So this is what we are being told. And what's on their place now, there's been a rock that's been marked as a marker to say that that's the official source of the River Thames. And all that's there now is a few rocks that have been just scattered randomly on the field on there to say that's where the spring is. That is the source of the River Thames. And as you can see, there's remnants of an old oak tree, which has now died, which was probably used as a marker to mark this particular spot. But there are many people who dispute the Environment Agency says being the source of the River Thames. Because at this particular point, it's quite interesting. There's a sign next to the rock, which is in place there, which gives the distance, these two distances, One is to Woolwich in London, which is where the Thames barrier is, I believe. And one is from this source to the sea. And another thing that's got connection with Oxford is if you add all these digits up together, they all add up to 7. So if you add 2, 3, and 2, we get the number 7. So that's another connection with the number 7 to Oxford. But a lot of people, like I say, dispute that this is the true source of the river, because some believe that there's a tributary river which is called the Churn, which has a much better claim as being the source of the river Thames, as it rises in a village which is called Seven Springs, which again has the word 7 in the name of the village, Springs. And it also happens to be exactly 700 feet above sea level. So we've got the number 7 again. And from the point of the source of the River Thames to Oxford, is it no surprise that the distance is exactly 34 miles away? So again, we've got the reference with the 7, adding the 3 and 4 together, as well as the 3 and 4 in Oxford, the way it's allocated its twinning of the cities. So in my own personal opinion, with all the links to the 7, the other source in the village of Seven Springs is more likely to be the true source, because the Environment Agency is a government organised body. So the government usually want to tell people what they want people to think, which isn't always the truth on what they say. So I'm more inclined to believe that this is a particular source of the River Thames, which goes through to Oxford. So just to briefly, as a conclusion, in my opinion, Oxford is located in the centre of where it's supposed to be for a specific purpose based on its geology, material type, and previous civilizations that have lived in that area for a reason, because it's connected to all these 7 cities, twinned with these 7 cities of a specific distance, which is mathematically precise, which is too much of a coincidence to be done randomly. And it is also, in my opinion, that the controllers these days, their greatest desire and wish is to make sure that they own and control absolutely everything in the land. So even natural things like water, the air that we breathe in, they like to think that they actually control and own it. So that's one of the main factors on it. And just to give you a reference to number 7, because I missed out the reference to number of 7, which is why it's a significant number, because number 7 is a significant number, and it's relating to the divine, because 7 is the number of perfection of purpose, whether that be good or bad, as it's sacred within the Bible, and it's regarded as a divine number which is associated with God and the Creator. For good, God uses number 7 to represent the perfection of his purpose in salvation to his people, such as creating the world in 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested from the creation that he's done as salvation to his people. But it also represents the negative side, in a bad sense, as things that relates to things that belong to Satan. 7 is a perfect number because it's a summarization of the numbers 3 and 4, which symbolically represent the triangle and square as seen in the Freemasonic symbology. So it is considered a perfect number that indicates completion. So with this, we can see with the number 7, why it's got significant importance to Oxford is it's got the 2 elements. It's got the positive element, as you have in the circuit board, and the negative element. So it's got the element associated with the 7, which is the positive and the negative element to 7, which can be seen throughout the symbology of Oxford, the way it stands. So basically, Oxford has been put there for a purpose, and all the buildings, especially the University of Oxford, is like a precision instrument made specifically for that spot to enhance and transfer of energy for its intended purpose and its connection to the Earth's natural grid. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And that was Adam's summary on my findings in Oxford and a little more information regarding the 7 cities, the ley lines and the grid. But just before I leave you, the 7 locations twinned with Oxford was Leiden, Bonn, Lyon, Grenoble, Wrocław, Romola and Padua. Now when we link all of the cities up in the order which was located on the board, we get this shape. And this shape seems to give us a key location in Europe, an X, by Zurich and Liechtenstein, above from Milan, very close to Geneva and also Davos, interestingly. Now when we zoom into this location, it gives us a name, Inner Erfel, which is in Switzerland. And when we look at the location, there's this huge body of water surrounded by mountains again, with the name Hinter Stoss and Wald Erfel close also. Wald reminding me of Voldemort. Inner Erfel reminding me of Inner Earth. Inner Earth, and as already stated, world leaders travel to very close locations in Geneva and Davos. Should we ask the question that the locations they are going to are nothing but decoys and then travelling to a more hidden location? It's very interesting, and we have to consider the pattern that the lines make. Is this a place of significance? And what always gets me about these type of places is look how it looks like a brain again, or veins, or some type of in-depth organism. We find a place called Sion, which reminds me of Zion, again on a mountain top, and Interlaken, reminding me again of Inner Earth. The location seems to be prominent also. When we look where it's located, it's not far from major cities: Geneva, Lyon, Turin, Milan, Venice, Munich, Zurich, Stuttgart. Located in between France, Italy, Austria, Germany, just to name a few. There is a smaller cross created in the UK. It lands here, which does seem like a prominent location in terms of the geography already, with the Royal School of Needlework placed there. And you can see the lines and the formations that it would create next to Oaklands, Kingsfield. But the line that I find more interesting is the line that runs to Lyon, the other side of the world, as it passes through key UK cities and other cities around the world. Again, this line falls on Thorpe Park, something that I visited before, and also very close to Heathrow. But when we follow the line across, we see it almost comes from Canterbury, through Maidstone, Croydon, London, past Basingstoke, Reading, Swinton, Bristol, Cardiff, very close to Swansea, passing through Ireland again close to Cork, and other cities which seem to fall along the line. And when we follow it over to Lyon, we see how close it sits to Cuba. And also in between the lines is the Bermuda Triangle. It's very interesting. And when we just look at Bonn, the 2 lines which come from the city of Bonn, look at that huge quarry that sits there. Absolutely huge. This would have been a tree location for sure. And then I just thought I'd take a look to see the twin cities concerned with Birmingham. There were 6. And the pattern it creates is very similar to that we found in Oxford. And the shape, the X. And it's not far from Zurich, from the Inner Earth location. Look how similar the patterns are. All that I can ask of you is check out where you live, check out what cities you twin to, and then do the same vibe done, creating the pattern to see if it creates a similar light pattern. If so, where does the X fall? Is it central to Europe, near the same place which I'm talking about? Close to Geneva, close to Davos, close to these places where all the world's leaders meet. It's an interesting find, and there's more to do with the Twin Cities for sure. I couldn't leave you without exploring the 7 twin cities and exploring to see if it creates a shape on the map, and it does, to see if the X marks a spot. Anyone with comments, observations, please leave below or email me. There's a lot more to explore in Oxford, so let's consider this part 1. Love and light, people. Thank you for your time and patience.